But if you're sitting there and you're watching your opponent's side deck and you're not doing anything, that's just arrogance that's going to lead you to losing the game. Hey everybody, it's your boy VG Time back again with another video. And as the title and thumbnail should help you appreciate, we're going to be talking about side decking today. Now, side decking is one of the most confusing aspects of any trading card game. The reason for this is because it's not terribly intuitive. Even experienced players find it difficult to make really good side decks, and even when they do make really good side decks, a lot of times they fall into several pitfalls that causes for them not to be able to gain victory. Even though this video is more targeted towards a beginner to intermediate player, even if you're an advanced player, you might pick up some things here or there in this video that helps you get over the hump in order for you to claim your top whatever finish. So starting off, we need to understand what a side deck is, what its purpose is, and how to construct one. A side deck is usually a group of cards outside of your main deck that you have access to either between games in best of three situations, or in some games you have access to it before the game start, particularly in a best of one format. When that's the case, you need to understand several things. One, what is the meta you're playing into? Two, how does your deck match up against other decks in that meta? What cards are available to you to make your matchups better? How friendly is your deck to siding cards out? And what can people side against you? Because you're not the only one siding. Your opponent is also doing the same thing. So what is the meta you're playing into? First, we need to define meta. A lot of times people confuse this, but meta stands for the most effective tactics available. The term meta should not be confused with the best deck, because that's not always the case. Sometimes, due to either a gentleman's agreement or due to finances at your locals, for instance, the best deck may not even be there. People might be more into a casual, more fun type of situation. With that being the case, if you showed up with a bunch of cards aimed at the best deck, you're going to end up with a bunch of dead cards. So you kind of have to pay attention to what's going on. And that's not only just at locals, that's also on a regional level, on a national level, on a world level. If you look at the game Dragon Ball Super, if you looked around the world, you will see America was known to be the place that loves blue. Europe was a place that loves red. South America loves green. And just so on and so forth. It's not that all those different regions, one was strictly better or worse than the other. It's just that that's what their meta was. Like, that's how their meta evolved. You have to take that into consideration. Just because you expect a certain thing doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. Kind of have to investigate. But once you figure out what it is that you're walking into, or at least have a chance to figure out what it is that you're walking into, you have to try to get as many games in as possible to figure out what the strength of your deck is against those decks in the meta, and from there, figure out what you need to bring in to make those matchups better. A lot of times when you speak to players, especially very advanced players, or even those that want to try to sound advanced, they talk about matchups in the terms of percentages. They talk about, 90-10, 80-20, 60-40, 70-30, whatever. And there might be a basis to that, but most of the time it's just people talking. You have to actually put the time in yourself. The reason being is because there's too many variables going on with that matchup that they claim is whatever it is for you to be able to trust it. Let's say, for instance, they are playing against a strictly better player than them. And so they take a deck, they play against that player, they lose 9 out of 10 games. They go, oh man, I couldn't even beat them but one time. The matchup is 90-10. It might be 90-10 because you're just not good enough. But let's flip it to the other side. Maybe you're better than they are. So they're telling you the matchup is impossible. You're playing it. You're winning the games, and you're trying to figure out why they feel that way. So you just got to put your time in, figure it out for yourself, put yourself around good players, and see what's going on. Not everybody has a team, but when you get the chance to play someone in a setting, don't be afraid to lose. One of the things that come up is our ego gets too big, right? So we're going into games with victory in mind. I, on the other hand, have found it more helpful to go into games and experiment. You go in a game and you go, okay, what happens if I get too greedy here? Or what happens if just let this go out another turn and not try to do this on this turn? And you'll be amazed at how much you learn from doing that. And what you could figure out is how to make a matchup that it seems unfavorable a little bit more favorable in the main deck. Because that's what you got to make sure you shore up first, is the main deck. Then once you have that settled, you could then go and bring in cards, figure out cards you need to make the matchup even better. That's where card pool knowledge comes into play. You have to know what cards are available that can help you out. And what you typically want to do is go with cheap, efficient cards that have the effects that you want. So for instance, if you're playing a slower deck versus a more aggressive deck, you want to make sure that you bring in something to help you to stretch the game out a little bit more. So for example, let's say there's a bunch of experience or shields being thrown around everywhere. Yes, there's a card like Confiscate that costs 1 resource that pops event. What you really want to be doing is playing maybe a card like Bamboozle that has the ability to get rid of all of them, or a card like Power Failure to give you the ability to deal with all of them at the same time. Maybe you're not even really worried about the upgrades. Maybe you're more so focused on finding the right piece of removal to get rid of the card before it becomes too big of a problem. Those are the things you got to look for when you're side decking. Just the most efficient, most effective answer to the situations that you found to be difficult during your playtesting. Now, next you have to look at your deck's ability to side in general. Some decks, such as your mid-range to control good stuff decks, has the ability to switch around many components of his deck because there's just so many, you just taking out one set of answers for another set of answers. Compare that to your theme-based decks, to your combo-based decks. You'll find out that in general, you don't have as much flexibility there. For instance, let's take Sabine Wren. She's typically a heroic rebel strategy. So with that being the case, when you want to play a card like For Cause, which is a very powerful card, or like Fleet Lieutenant or Wing Leader, what you don't want to do is have a side deck full of non-rebel cards or non-heroic cards that will make those cards less good. And that does happen because, we get a little bit of ahead of ourselves. Also, in the combo deck, your deck is extremely tight in those cases because each card usually leads to another card that leads to a final product. So you maybe only could bring in 1 to 2 cards in that situation. What I've found in my TCG journey is that typically you are able to bring in 5 to 10% of your total deck size from your side deck before your deck starts becoming really terrible as far as consistency goes. So in the case of Star Wars, where decks are typically 50 cards, you want to be bringing in anywhere from 2 to 5 cards into your deck from your side deck. Sometimes though, you are public enemy number 1. You're playing your best deck in your room, or you're playing that combo deck and you are the guy that is being gunned for. You need to have the knowledge of what it is that hurts your deck that your opponent will bring in and have cards to be able to answer that card. So for instance, if the main deck don't run the healing and you're playing the aggressive deck and you just ran over them, you might need to bring in a card like Wolf to help you stave off their healing that they're going to bring in. Or if you're playing against a control deck that has the ability to remove your threats real efficiently, or have like a really big board wipe, you might want to bring in a card like Spark of the Rebellion. So what you really want to be doing is thinking about what hurts you, what hurts your strategy, and what it is that you could do to stop them when you're in the position of power. To wrap this up, we got to talk about the pitfalls that often occurs with improper side deck. The first one is simply not side decking at all. I did a YouTube short saying that you should always side deck. I often fall into this pitfall as well because maybe you're in a more casual environment. But if you're sitting there and you're watching your opponent's side deck and you're not doing anything, that's just arrogance that's going to lead you to losing the game. So always side deck. Even if you don't have cards for that specific matchup, you may have dead cards in your deck and you might have generically okay cards that are better than the dead cards that you have main deck. Second is siding too many cards for a deck type. One of the things that often angers me is when I hear a player go, oh man, my deck is so great against everything, but it's really bad against, let's say, an aggressive deck. So my 10 card side deck, all 10 of the cards is dedicated to the aggro matchup. That's when I asked the question, why not just put some of those cards main deck to help you against a matchup in game 1 and then side in more to shore up the matchup in game 2 if you're so good against everything else? And usually people can't give me a straight answer on that, and eventually they come around to my way of thinking. Because what happens when you do something like that is that you end up oversiding. And we talked about in the beginning of the video where you could bring in too many cards and mess up the consistency of your deck. You want to be in that sweet 2 to 5 card range. If you are being that narrow, you're not going to be able to deal with something unexpected. From my travels and tournaments, you just see it all the time. Hey, what happened? Oh, I lost. I can't believe they were playing this random rogue deck. It don't make sense. My whole side deck is for the tier 1 deck in the room. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but people play what they want to play. And if you get caught out with your pants down because you decided to ignore the possibility, that it's on you. That concludes this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned some things. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel as I put out future videos. Share it if you want to. I'll catch you again next time. This is VG Time signing out.